blocks taken away, leaving the remaining classes of Rogue, Priest, and Druid. Of course, we ruined the fact that we got a man to record it for us.
A man?
These two players, well, of course, sorry, the Innkeeper.
A man?
It's like Voldemort, you
and a
can't
list.
say his name. I've done a lot of like Harry Potter and Star Wars references today, haven't I?
Yeah, you have. Do you know the Innkeeper's name?
What, his actual name?
He actually does have a
Christian
name.
name.
Yeah. Ever since, I believe it was ever since the Hearth is Home video came out, he is now a character that has a name.
Is it Ben Brode?
It is. It is, in fact, Ben Brode, actually.
Got him.
Yeah.
And moving on.
So Mysterious will be piloting, of course, the aggro Druid here, going up against Toastmonster with his Rogue. Now, the Dire Mole, being in Mulligan, is pretty good. I mean, it's a card that has had heavy discussion when it was first announced. It was kind of a card that we thought might go under the radar, being a neutral card, of course, but it seems to do pretty well in aggro Druid.
Yeah, this is actually kind of a weird starting hand, because having singular minions, no matter how big or small they may be, isn't really what you want in the early turns against the Rogue. You kind of just want to go super, super wide so that you can hit a Mark of the Lotus or a Power of the Wild. And obviously Southsea Captain does afford you some amount of wideness onto an early board, but it's not an awful lot. So just a single backstab coming into the hand for Toastmonster could massively change the dynamic of this game.
Just so everybody knows, the Innkeeper's name is Hearthstone Brew. I totally knew that and did not just look it up while you were talking.
I mean, I did know that, but I thought we were not doing that for the banter.
Hearthstone Brew.
Hearthstone Brew.
So his name is actually Hearthstone.
Yeah.
All right, Blizzard.
Bit on the nose.
Yeah.
Bit on the
Cheeky.
massive, friendly red nose.
Alright, so Toastmonster going to start chipping away at the Dire Mole. He needs to get Mysterious off of the board, though that is something, as we've established, Rogue is very good at doing against aggro. Picking up Corridor Creeper after living mana, though, it's looking good for Mysterious at the moment.
Oh yeah, absolutely. He's pulling ahead in the early turns of the game, which you absolutely cannot expect to happen against Rogue, although obviously you are fairly often going to be pulling ahead. One card, as I said, like Backstab or a strong patch is being pulled out of the deck, can turn it all around. But it is, once again, worth remembering that Toastmonster is running Galaka Crawlers in this list. I would hope in lieu of Prince Keleseth, but maybe in addition.
Cow Creeper makes a beautiful sound when it's played, doesn't it?
And we can actually talk about it as well, because Neil's not on the desk. The man who plays without sounds in Hearthstone.
Oh yeah.
I mean, even him, like, he can hear this, right?
Exactly.
Right? He can? He's not that old, is he?
No, he's not quite that old.
I know
Must
you did
surprise
promise
him.
just one old joke.
Yeah, well, you made it, so it's absolutely fine.
It's true.
So here for Mysterious, it's kind of an intriguing turn, because Savage Roar obviously allows you to trade in the Mole and the Hero, and you're pushing through with a 3/3 Captain. But the thing is, if you just leave up the Tar Creeper, there's not much the Rogue can do to take advantage of that, and then it's only got one attack, taking out the Dire Mole. Maybe instead we just see Power of the Wild to come down to go a little bit wider on the board.
Oh, he's going to go with the Savage Roar, though. Pushes a lot more damage now, allows him to keep that Southsea Captain around. Okay, sure. I guess Power of the Wild is more valuable later after living mana. That's one of the big features about that at the moment.
I mean, even if he just ends up going double Power of the Wild next turn, that's still a fine play.
That's
it
true.
means he'll probably be even on board going into Living Mana, and then he'll probably just win, because Living Mana is far and away the most powerful thing that either of these decks can do on turn 5.
I feel as though it's quite likely we see Corridor Creeper next turn, one way or another, because Toastmonster will play something, let's face it. A minion's going to die, even if it ends up being Corridor Creeper plus Power of the Wild. To create the Panther or to buff the board, that's looking like a good turn 4 to me.
Turn 4 is going to be an important one just because it's going into the Living Mana turn. And I like getting rid of Savage Roar there, because the amount of times you play Living Mana, you don't get a chance usually to use Savage Roar in conjunction with the Living Mana anyway, because either A, they just leave them up, they don't usually trade into just a couple and leave you on 3 mana. That happens very rarely.
That is actually going to be a 1 mana Corridor Creeper, which doesn't change
So
things
close.
too much. That maybe becomes an option, though. Depends if Mysterious wants to play around Valspine Slayer or not.
I mean, you can just Hero Power down the Swashbuckler and
Oh,
then go
of
Power of the Wild, Corridor Creeper. Feels like the best use of the mana on this turn,
That's
because
much better, yeah.
with the Power of the Wild and the Creeper coming down on this turn, you're looking to be in a very good spot, as I said, to be ahead on the board. Even in the worst case scenario, if Backstab Valspine comes down, you're still in a respectable spot, I would say. But
I wonder what Mysterious will do next turn.
You seem conflicted, Daryl.
yeah, going for the Mark of Yasharaj there is... it's kind of weak to the same stuff, because no matter what, if Valspine Slayer comes down on this turn, that's the worst thing that can happen for Mysterious, whether he goes for the Power of the Wild or not. but I think I probably would have gone with the Power of the Wild on its own anyway, because of the fact that it gives you a little bit of a wider board, and if you're hitting one Power of the Wild on this living mana, you're probably winning the game anyway.
It's a tricky one. It's not like Mysterious needed the card draw that turn because he was always playing living mana next turn anyway. Then again, I guess playing it when you get the chance is a good thing because you're not necessarily going to play Power of the Wild for a Panther. You don't know when your next beast is, so drawing the card while you can could be considered good. I don't know. I'm conflicted as well, but I think I'm quite happy with the Market Viscerage.
I just think it gives you slightly more potential weakness to a wide board coming down from your opponent on this turn. Because if you're setting up for a lot of damage coming in on the following turn, maybe you're starting to be a bit vulnerable to Leroy and Shadow Step shenanigans.
There we go. Toastmonster does, in fact, run Eviscerate, as we predicted earlier. If you're running Galactic Crawler, not running Prince Kaliseth, there is no reason not to run this amazing 2-mana deal 4 damage card.
Oof, but the perfect card of Starfall does indeed make quick work of everything here for Mysterious, and Toastmonster is now still in the driving seat here, and all of a sudden the 2 Power of the Wilds are looking very weak indeed for Mysterious.
And that's just the power of stealing cards from your opponent's deck, and just that one random card that you are not going to be playing around can be so frustrating when something like that happens.
Yeah, well, it's also the difference between the sort of Priest and Rogue mechanics of stealing, because if it was Priest, he wouldn't have been able to do that. Mysterious does not run Starfall in his deck, but Rogue
so far
steals
as we
from
know.
class. So far as we know. But so far as it's a class card, you do get these completely random ones that you don't expect.
But obviously for Mysterious, you know, you can't play around the nonsense of Starfall coming down from your opponent. It's completely random card being generated, and he just got a little bit unfortunate there, but he's still putting himself in a respectable spot for the moment. But there's just so much strong counterplay here for Toastmonster, being able to go for Tar Creeper SI, being able to go for Bone Mare, being able to go for Eviscerate with something. There's just so much good stuff.
To try and come back now for Mysterious is looking pretty dire, to be honest. Not dire mole.
Not Diamond.
Yeah, it's looking pretty dire.
Just dire in general.
It's not a good position to be in, and this is why we've been saying all day that this is a favoured matchup for the Rogue. It's because if they do have the backstab, the SI7 agent, those tools to rip the aggressive deck off the board, they also have the late game and the sustain to take the game and just snowball it out of control and win later on.
Yeah, I don't know if I would necessarily call it that much of a favoured matchup for the Rogue, because obviously in this instance he got the lucky clear for the...
the Starfall, right, yeah.
Yeah, for
That's
the living
true.
mana, but it wasn't a ridiculously powerful starting hand for the Druid before the... I suppose that is before the Corridor Creeper came into effect, but it was a respectable starting hand for the Rogue as well.
Yep, you're right, you're right. We've been saying that typically Rogue is sort of the aggro killer.
Yeah.
But you're right, like it's very difficult when living mana comes down on 5 for a class that doesn't have wide removal to deal with that.
Well, it's just because if you look at it as Rogue is an inherently reactive tempo deck. It's, you know, ball control saying earlier on, and most people would agree with him, that, you know, you don't want to be just throwing out stuff on the board. You want your patches to come into play and trade away instantly. You want to make sure you're getting value with reactive plays with cards like Valspine as well. But against aggro Druid, there is often in the first 2 or 3 turns too much stuff to answer. But fortunately for Toastmonster, that was not the case in this game, and he is going to be bringing this game up to 1-0.
It's nice to see that Toastmonster making the decision to bring a Galactic Crawler rather than having Kaliseth in, to put those 2 drops in, put the Eviscerates in, and it's worked. This is the 2nd game now that he's been able to get a victory with this Rogue.
It's funny because I think it was Lorinda, correct me if I'm wrong, I think it was Lorinda that was saying one of the problems with the less experienced players might be that they over-tech.
I think that's fair. For Mysterious, you know, he's been playing so much, he's played so many premierships, he's been in every single final so far, so nerves are hopefully a thing of the past for him. But for Toastmonster, his game earlier today, he did kind of mess up the end of a Raza Priest turn, missed a fair few pings, which gave an out for his opponent in Dan.
And that was because, in his eyes, he'd won the game, right?
Yeah.
So he was like, oh, I've won this game, doesn't really matter. Oh, Lyra thinks, oh, no, what's happening?
He was freaking out at the end.
Kerfuffled.
Yeah, exactly. And he did misplay in the end. He was obviously in a very, very advantageous spot, and he played well to get himself there. But under pressure, he was showing some small signs of cracking. But here for the moment in this aggro Druid mirror, a lot of things going well for both of the players on so far. Mark of Yasharaj with an almost definite target on one of these Ravens is very, very nice for Mysterious to push an early advantage and keep his card economy high. But for Toastmonster, the Corridor Creeper could be the tempo swing he needs to make sure that he doesn't fall too far behind then.
It's just such a powerful card, man. Like, it's in any tempo matchup, you have to run this card, because if one player has a 0 mana 5/5, on the curve, somewhere between turn 1 and 6, and the other player does not, that's a huge advantage for the player that does have it.
So something that maybe I'm a little bit behind in is in this current meta with Corridor Creeper, how aware are you of how many minions you've killed? Is there ever a situation where you don't trade as much because you're worried about your opponent playing a Creeper or anything like that? Is there even a possibility of playing around it?
I think very possibly yes, I would say. In the previous series with Hello Leroy in the Rogue Mirror, we saw him taking it very, very slow because he had quite a slow hand that didn't have Corridor Creeper in it. Like, for example, on turn 3, when he could have played a Captain, he just daggered up. Again, because of that, he was not playing out his minions just to die, taking it a little bit slower because he realized if my opponent plays Corridor Creeper for 0 mana on turn 6, that's fine, because I can just Valspine it. If they play it now, I'm definitely just falling behind.
Obviously, the downside to that, it means that you're not playing minions and your opponent is getting the additional tempo gain of getting on the board while you are not anyway. Personally, I think Corridor Creeper is very difficult to play around. If you're trying to play around it, you're letting your opponent get ahead regardless. And the thing is, if you're putting minions down and just not trading, then you're letting your opponent make the better trades for them. So it's so tough. That card is just too strong.
I think that's a specific Rogue Mirror thing rather than any of these other Corridor Creeper decks, because that's a matchup where you can afford to be a lot slower and a lot more reactive. Whereas if you're a Rogue against a Paladin or an Aggro Druid, they're going to go very, very wide on the board, so you have to keep up.
All right, so Mysterious now facing down the card that we've just been talking about for the last 5 minutes. Doing his best to build up this board. Obviously, Crypt Lord is very strong, but Toastmonster does have the ability to deal with it this turn if he wants to. He could play the Mark of Yeshuraj and the Mark of the Lotus, but that is putting a lot of resources into just dealing with one minion.
Got to ask you as well what you feel about this Druid of the Swarm for Taunt as opposed to Poisonous Spider. Because
do you know what? When he was playing the card, I was wondering if it'd go Poisonous.
Yeah, so was I.
Glad it wasn't just me.
Yeah, there's not really much that can be done to answer it behind a Taunt, to be honest, and now it just gets value traded pretty nicely by the Corridor Creeper.
Yeah, maybe a questionable decision there for Mysterious, but you know, the man has a reason for a lot of things, and he is in the semi-final of the winner's bracket right now, so it's hard to argue with anything. Living Mana is very tempting here. I mean, it buffs up your Crypt Lord. You have a follow-up of Mark of the Lotus next turn as well.
I would agree that it's very tempting in this particular instance. What, a 13 health 3-drop? Priest can only dream.
Oh, wouldn't you mind Divine Spirit interfiring that?
I would love to, Daniel.
Oh, or playing Potion of Madness on it and then Divine Spirit interfiring it.
Job done.
And the thing is, any board now that Toastmonster can build up, the trades the Mysterious could make with that Direwolf there as well, just 3-2, 3-2, 3-2, 3-2, like it could be incredible.
It very possibly will be.
You think it will be?
I think it will be.
So despite what we were saying about Corridor Creeper being a big deal in these matchups, turns out Crypt Lord, if you can get it big enough, but if your opponent can't deal with it, that in itself is able to just do so much work because it protects the board, allowing you to attack.
That's right. This is like the perfect war machine that's been created. You've got like your shield. We've made Bastion basically from like old school Bastion from Overwatch. We had a little shield on front because that's like the shield, and then he's just like firing off things with these other parts.
Man, he was much too strong.
Yeah. I mean, this is much too strong as well, so it's a perfect comparison.
That's fair. That's fair.
So Toastmonster just trying to react as best as he can by using Mark of the Lotus to get a board, but the fact that Mysterious has Mark of the Lotus plus the Direwolf as well, this is just going to be extremely ugly.
Yeah.
Oh boy.
No, it's not. I was going to say it's almost kind of bad to play Mark of the Lotus because you can't get the machine gun effect by attacking into the Crypt Lord, but it dies instantly straight away, obviously. So now you can just sacrifice most of your board if you want to. Oh, you can't get the machine gun effect.
It's bad to play Mark of the Lotus in the same way that it's good to draw patches.
Yeah, okay. As in, it's not.
Yeah, pretty much, yeah.
Right, okay.
So in theory, you could have used 2 of the 3/3s
Yeah,
to
that's
trade
what I
in,
was looking
right?
at.
The
Yeah.
2 furthest most right ones,
Yeah.
and then you'd be able to trade in everything else and get the effect of
Okay.
Direwolf.
It's
I
kinda
don't
awkward
think
whatever
it's
way to do it.
necessary. I don't think it's necessary, but it's something worth considering.
I'm just trying to figure out how it would have worked out after the fact, because you'd have 2 guys on the right who are at 2 health, or sorry, 1 health as opposed to 3. But you're going to be trading quite a lot of stuff into things that just die.
I don't think any of this matters too much. I think Mysterious just trades away the minions that are easy to trade into and leaves the Galactic Crawlers alive. Goes face with everything else.
He really doesn't want a buff to come down on things, though. But
There's not really much you can do about that, though, unless he's trading in literally everything else. And that feels really poor.
I think he could have killed everything if he had gone the other way about it.
I think he could have ended up with slightly better statted minions. It was definitely something you should have thought about more, because obviously then you're trading 2 guys into a 2-attack minion as opposed to 2 guys into a 5-attack minion. It's actually pretty simple. But the draws here for Toastmonster are just not there, and there aren't really very many all that good draws for him at the moment, because he's going to be losing his board very quickly, so the buff cards like Savage Roll, Mark of the Lotus become a lot worse, and he needs to find something like, I don't know, his own living mana to start threatening back in terms of board control.
I mean, he's done all right to get back into this board. I was going to say, actually, probably shouldn't count him out, but I mean, a living mana does help Mysterious get back.
Well, that's the turn, isn't it? I don't think there's any reason to consider playing these several weak minions when you can just fill up the board. You've got 5 2/2s, the other 2 minions that have 3 attack.
Yeah, this is a real test of my living mana mechanics, because if he trades in both first, he'd spend 5 mana. Oh yeah, but he'd still get 7 treants then, wouldn't he? Yeah.
Oh, that's true. He would get the 7 trees, so yeah.
But then you are, yes, okay, you're putting 7 2/2s on the board, but your opponent has a considerable amount of damage. Savage Roar off the top, of course, wouldn't be lethal.
Yeah, and that's the key thing, right?
And it is purely off the top, because Mysterious will have been keeping track, I would imagine, and he'll know that there's a Flame Elemental.
Patches is still in the deck. That makes this much better, because now he can actually deal with 2 of these minions that have 1 health.
Really? I don't even know if this is that much better, to be honest.
I still kind of like living mana.
I don't mean much better than the living mana. I mean much better than it would have been if Patches was dead. Like, not playing the living mana is now better because Patches is in it.
Yeah. It's worth considering, but after things trade in, he'd still be left with, like, what, 4 or 5 treants?
Dan Gaskin, the Prophet!
I mean, you can't be results-oriented about this. Stop giving me that look. You turn your eyes away,
He does this, Derek, doesn't he? He does this all the time.
He's giving me a cold, hard stare.
Rather than some cold hands stare. Or, as you wrote in your notebook, hands cold.
Yeah, I got a little bit
just gonna point
confused
that
there.
out.
That was writing down his
Throw you
name.
under the bus a little bit.
Thanks, mate.
What about a toasty stare and a... No? Okay.
Well, I mean, you were saying the joke, mate. I don't know what you want me to do.
I was just trying to get you to say Toastmonster.
Well,
okay.
Fuck said it.
Well, I can say it.
Okay,
That's actually the first time I've ever said it.
I don't believe you. It's not the first time anyone's ever said it. Even Frankie says it now.
I've never cast him before now.
Well, it is a treat.
You don't talk about it with your mates, though.
A little bit of a whiff of a draw, but just the fact he has living mana in his hand just means that it doesn't really matter what happens.
Yeah, he's put himself in a fine spot no matter what, basically. I was still looking at the living mana last turn, but I guess he's figured out I maybe lose to Savage Roar into Savage Roar then or something, whereas I win every time this way. Yeah, it was very much debatable.
Enchanted Raven is not going to help the situation whatsoever, unfortunately for Toastmonster. So we are going to be seeing this series even up 1-1. Of course, the Savage Roar and trading is going to try and do what he can to stay alive, but it's not going to matter in the grand scheme of things. So Mysterious will be very happy to get back into the series. Of course, you never want to go 2-0 down because things just become incredibly more difficult.
Yeah, and for this remaining games, it's actually pretty interesting how it's going to work out, because it's going to be, what, the Rogue and the Priest for Mysterious up against the Druid and the Priest for Toastmonster. And I'd say they're all fairly equivalent matchups throughout. The Druid against the Rogue, probably the main difference, and I would say the Druid probably is in a decent spot to take that, given it's got double Galactic Crawlers and inherently can just go super wide on the board.
They're going to bring, so Mysterious is going to bring his Rogue, and it's still going to be the Druid then for Toastmonster. How do you see this matchup panning out, Derek?
I mean, looking at what we've got in hand for the moment, pretty nice start available for Mysterious, because he's got stuff that just kills stuff. Patches, in combination with Dagger and Backstab, should be able to deal with the first couple of minions that come down for Toastmonster. But he's got a very strong hand in response to that. Druid of the Swarm into Mark of Yasharaj is all but guaranteed to survive. And then outside of that, Corridor Creeper is just really good in this matchup where lots of things are going to be dying, and the Rogue probably won't have the answer.
Savagery, that's exactly what you want from your Swashbuckle.
You can deal 1 damage when you got the Dagger equipped.
1 mana, deal 1 damage. What a card.
And
As opposed to 0 mana, deal 2 damage.
Yeah, fair enough, fair enough. It's no Starfall, one might say.
One might say that.
And so now here there is actually the ability for Mysterious to kill off this Druid of the Swarm. But Toastmonster can only be so sad about that because he's just had his opponent use 2 of the premier cards in this matchup in Swashbuckler, pulling out Patches in the backstab, just to deal with 1 of his cards. Doesn't have any follow-up though, which is a very big downside of this line of play.
He does have both Corridor Creepers in hand though, which is going to be quite nice. Maybe turns 5 or 6.
Probably 4.
Sometimes when the Rogue can get back onto the board, they think they've done the job, and then suddenly, wham, bam, thank you, ma'am, you drop 2 to 5/5s, and they're struggling and they're quaking in their little Rogue boots.
Yeah. So, Fel, you're having a little giggle at Toastmonster.
No. I'm laughing at wham bam, thank you, man. I love it every time Dan Gaskin says that.
But Toastmonster there was hovering with the Mark of the Lotus, trying to make his opponent think that he's got something he can play there. Who knows? Maybe it'll work. It's probably not information that Mysterious can use to his advantage all that heavily.
It's really where the kind of differentiation between your average Hearthstone Legend player and pro players really come in. Because your average Hearthstone player wouldn't necessarily even notice that happening. But then your good player would notice that and think, okay, that's obviously a playable card. But then the even better Hearthstone player would maybe think, actually, that's just a bluff. I'm not going to pay attention to it.
But then the best Hearthstone player would think...
What would he think, Derek?
My name's Ball Control.
He would probably think, I shouldn't be wasting my time thinking about the card that my opponent doesn't have. Instead, I should focus on my turn.
What do I do with my turn? Yeah.
And ultimately, that is, to be fair, if you, as a player, can force your opponent to take any time away from their turn, then that is actually a good thing.
If the very best player is thinking, my name is Ball Control, then he should also be thinking, why am I in the loser's bracket?
Oh. Things villas. But here for Mysterious, respectable way to get things going. The Elven Minstrel obviously is very slow in this matchup, but it's been a very slow start from his opponent. There was a card that was kept in the mulligan. Was the Corridor Creeper kept or found off the mulligan? I think it might have been found. So not really something he can factor into his decision making, but he's always going to be having Corridor Creeper in the back of his mind at least.
This is really hard to judge because the double Corridor Creeper is obviously insanely strong for the aggro druid, but Mysterious has got a couple of good resources as well. He's got Flame Elemental into Earthen Minstrel. That can give him some of these real power tools, the Vilespine Slayer, the Bone Mare. That's very, very helpful to him. He's not going to run out of resources anytime soon.
I mean, he's going to be falling so far behind on board. He just has to find Vilespine, I was going to say, in the next turn or two. But Toastmonster isn't even going for a single Corridor Creeper here.
Wow.
And I question how much better +1/+1 is than a 5/5 in this situation, and you're still very likely to have a board of some description in the next turn or two.
Yeah, I was definitely looking at the 5/5, but I guess it's that surprise effect of just dropping both of them at the same time, maybe? I can understand because it means the captain is harder to deal with at this point.
Yeah. I just doubt that it's worth it. There's still the ability for Mysterious to kill it off with the dagger, and you're very likely going to be able to make a couple of sixes if you keep the Mark of the Lotus as well.
I guess at some point, Toastmonster having the ability to play Corridor Creepers for 0, at least it maximizes your efficiency of mana.
Yeah.
A decent thought process. I like Mysterious's play. Shadow Stepping, of course, the Saronite Chain Gang is something that has become more popular. It was something that maybe wasn't noticed straight away, but people realized the power of it, and in conjunction with Edwin as well. It was a really solid turn.
Yeah, speaking of really solid turns, this is obviously just a complete blowout for Toastmonster. This is what Rogue struggles with. They cannot deal with these wide boards, even when they find the Vilespine Slayer, which is exactly what he was looking for. This is a really powerful turn from the Rogue, but I just don't think it's quite going to be enough.
It's powerful, but it's not powerful enough. He can Savagery one of the 6/2s, then hit the weapon into it as well.
That's pretty good point.
That's what he's going to do. Deal with both 6/6s, again, with the Vilespine, as you said, and with the Edwin trade. Still leaves a 6/4 on the board, and still leaves a 2/4 on the board.
It leaves a 5/4 because the other captain dies. 5/3, sorry. So it then does trade into the Vilespine, but the Mark of Yasharaj will be able to pull this back. So this isn't actually over, I would say, for Toastmonster. This was the only card that could give a chance for Mysterious. Oh, it goes to 5-4, actually. Yeah, whatever.
You got it right the
That's what
first time.
That's what you said.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You said 5-4.
When I said a mistake, I corrected myself to the incorrect.
I didn't want to correct your incorrection of correcting yourself, so I just kind of stayed quiet.
Oh, is that
Actually,
why?
yes.
Right.
actually, in a
Thanks.
value trade as well, I like this a lot. It means that Mysterious can just keep his big board down as well. It means that Toastmonster may have to consider trading. Thank goodness he drew Savagery from the Swashbuckler. That's all I can say. Thank goodness it was Savagery.
Yeah. I don't know if Mysterious is going to be saying that, but he's... So what can he get in this instance to start pulling him back? Things like SA7 Agent are obviously very nice to deal with. One of the biggest 2 health minions I've seen in a good long while. And Elven Minstrel can get him close to that kind of stuff.
Backstab was the required draw, right? Because Backstab, then Earthen Minstrel, and then SA7 Agent.
Yeah, fair
that was the sequence.
That would have been glorious.
It would have been glorious.
Filthy, but glorious.
Filthy
A little bit like a mud bath.
Filthy plays in Hearthstone often are glorious.
Never had a bloodbath.
You should try. They're filthy, but glorious. funnily enough.
I really hope you actually mean a bath of mud.
Yes.
Okay, good.
Yes, I do.
Good, good, good.
Did you just stick your head all the way under? And
Don't know what else it could mean, but yes,
Yeah.
I mean an actual bath full of mud. This game is, well, pretty
one
much.
off lethal.
Yeah.
This game is one off lethal.
There's the Saronite Chain Gangs, though, which does allow him to not die to the hero power alone. And all of Toastmonster's minions are actually very, very vulnerable. So I do expect to see some value trading here. I suppose you can just get him down to 1, which he thinks is a lockout victory anyway.
I mean, even with Saronite Chain Gang, is that enough to prevent enough attack from going through?
Yeah, it is.
Yeah, you're right. It is.
Absolutely.
It absolutely is.
Yeah,
Unless there's a
especially with the
Savage roll.
Keleseth buff. Oh, no, the Keleseth buff didn't.
No, yeah.
Unless there's what, sorry?
Savage Roll.
Yeah, Savage Roll. There are draws that could close
So
out.
these trades are fairly obvious. The Flame Elemental has to go there. The Keleseth goes into the 8-2, and the 3-2 goes into one of these 1-2 minions, or into the 2-2. Probably into the 2-2, actually, if he's playing it completely safe. Then the Saronite Chain Gang protects that.
We've seen both marks of Yashirajas, actually, so I think most of the beast synergy, unless Vermin Sensei is in there, which has been hovering about, but I don't expect to see it, I think all the beast synergy is gone.
Going to play it safe regardless. It's a tough call to make.
Yeah.
You're right. If you're tracking every single card, if you believe that there's no advantage to doing it the other way. But okay, that's.
I mean, this is still a game because there's
Those
2
Bone
taunts and the taunt from Bone Mare.
Bone Mare's strong. 2
Yeah.
Bone Mares are even stronger.
Well, you can kill one of the 2/3s, then play, of course, a full board of Treants.
That's 14 attack, and there will only be what 10 health in the way.
Just 7, wouldn't it?
10 health of taunt. Well, there's the 3 from the 1 Saronite, and then the 7 from the 7/7 taunt.
Yeah. Of course, you'd want to put it on the captain.
But Toastmonster can also hero power this turn, so actually that's 9 health of taunt that's going to be on the way.
So I think it's going to have to be something a little bit extra to put this in Mysterious's favor. I'm looking at things like Backstab.
It's not even enough, is it?
Yeah.
Oh no, because he can make the trade with the... Okay.
So now with a total of 10 health of Taunt.
It's slightly awkward because obviously they're all 2/2s. There is the one attack minion, and Toastmonster
quite good.
can hero power this turn.
It was a very, very valiant effort for Mysterious. And actually, unless that draw had been found from Toastmonster, this could have gone back in Mysterious's favor on 1 health because Toastmonster did not elect to take value trades and lock out the ability for Saronite Chain Gang to pull it back. It was obviously worth looking at other options because maybe if he takes the value trades and doesn't bring his opponent down to 1 health, backstab SI7 Agent, maybe a Bone Mare could pull the game back. But without a lot of analysts on that game, I would say Toastmonster could potentially have locked that out 100% towards the end.
it was strange that Toastmonster decided not to kill off the Corsair as well and just get that extra 2/2. That was a bit weird for me, but regardless, he gets the victory and he goes 2-1 up here against Mysterious and is 1 game away from the winner's bracket final, which would be an incredible...
Lower your win rate against those decks because if you're pulling the Doom Guards instead of the Void Lords out of your deck with the Lackey, it can be not enough anti-aggro, but I would say it's a similar line of thinking to the Priest, where you're going to be winning one of those games, you're going to have a very good matchup. But as for the moment, Toastmonster, Glimmerroot, I can agree with keeping in pretty much the vast majority of matchups.
Yep.
Potion of Madness is a little bit more interesting, I would say.
Well, Potion of Madness is particularly weak after Prince Keleseth has been played. That's one of the issues with this matchup. But for the time being, it's going to be good at the start of the game.
It's weird you say that because Prince Keleseth is kind of only the actual good target for Potion of Madness in this deck. Everything else is either a 1-1 or a 1-2. I suppose the South Sea deck can.
Yeah,
but
exactly.
most stuff you don't really want to be bothering giving an answer with Potion of Madness. But I suppose with this line of play, just getting it off the board to deny value from Captain is definitely worth thinking about. But Spirit Lash would also have done the job next turn.
It's just that Keleseth brings, obviously, the deck hand out of range. It brings Psionic Chain Gang out of range. It's even worse when the Keleseth gets Shadow Step, because then literally no minion in the deck will have less than 2 attack.
Now, I think we've seen Rogue win twice against Priest today, but both times has been Keleseth, Shadow Step Keleseth, I believe. And it's just been absolute nuts for the Rogue and the Priest. Despite having so much possibilities of clear, they have struggled with just the sheer amount of power that comes out from the Rogue.
That's true, but that's because the difference between non-Keleseth and Keleseth games becomes so apparent in the matchup between Rogue and Priest, because it goes on for a relatively long amount of time compared to how Rogue games can go, so you can find a lot of value from the buff. And just passing the breaking points is so important. Making sure your minions don't die to Dragonfire Potion is so important. To Blood Mage Thalnos, Spirit Lash, all these kind of things make all the difference in the world.
Once again, Glimmerroot offered Toastmonster 2 2-drops and a card number 3. So, fairly obvious choice there.
So Mysterious electing to pull up as far ahead as he can on the board now, as opposed to going for the Keleseth 1 turn earlier. I think it's probably correct, because going into turn 4, the only AoE you're weak to is obviously the Orkanai Soul Priest with the Circle of Healing, or maybe Kazakus Coin 1 mana potion, but you're fairly resilient to that anyway. So getting the Keleseth down anytime in the next few turns will probably do the same effect.
Also gives you that 1 extra turn to potentially draw a Shadow Step as well. I mean, you may not even use it at this point as soon as it gets to that latter stage of the game, but I mean, at turn 5, still be tempting.
I think we've rounded the corner at this point away from Keleseth's Shadow Step, but it's worth mentioning, maybe on that turn he would have considered it, but now that Patches has been pulled out of the deck already, it becomes a lot less juicy, especially when you have Valspine already in hand.
Well, that's the thing. Shadow Step on its own is such a powerful tool in this deck. That's another card that Shadow Step's very good with.
That's kind of the best in this matchup.
There's another one.
Leroy is the best you can go for, because the Priest is very vulnerable to Leroy Shadow Step, and they don't have too much you want to hit with a Valspine, but it's not bad.
Thanks.
In other matchups, this would be a good Shadow Step as well. Not this one, but
In the later stages of the game, it could buy you an extra turn, actually. Like, getting heal against Priest, just to give you a bit more time so they can't just ignore the board and try and kill you, is intriguing. But obviously here, you just throw it down as the body.
it's a 4/5. What can I say? It's relatively safe against the Kazakus Potion in Toastmonster's hand as well. Obviously, the 4 damage board clear will not deal with the 4/5, unless Toastmonster also has deal 5 damage on top of that, and then that feels like a huge waste.
In this position as well, I like from Toastmonster going for the 5 cost as opposed to the 1 cost spell, because while his hand is relatively full compared to what you can expect to be in this position against a Rogue, he doesn't have all too much that will benefit off of a 1 cost potion, because if you have Raza and Anduin in hand with a Velen, then all of a sudden you just want 1 mana to start killing your opponent. But when you don't have Gadget Sand or Pyro or any nonsense like that, you just want a nice big AoE.
This play just makes itself, right? Keleseth, Elven Minstrel, to then draw 2 of the minions that have the Keleseth buff on top of that.
I mean, now is...
And now what? Now Keleseth Shadow Step's looking okay? Is that where we're going?
Dan is looking at me as if to say, well, you massive idiot. Keleseth Shadow Step looks good here.
Right.
It doesn't. I still think it's bad, but I...
It looks better, but... Look at that. He's going to go for it. Dan Gaskin is a very happy boy right now.
It's not even that I'm happy. It's just like
I look
smug.
like such
Smug.
an idiot.
Is that the word?
No, because Derek gives this perfect explanation why he is actually correct and why I am wrong. But then the sequence of draws does just change how everything is, and that's why Hearthstone's so great. Because people perceive things differently. People trust their cards differently.
It was still a tough call, though. I think playing the Keleseth, playing the Minstrel, and then Shadow Stepping the Minstrel would have been very strong as well. You then have 4 minions over the next couple turns, all of which have a 1/1 buff.
I mean, you can have 4 lots of +1/+1 buff, or two minions that have a +2/+2. So you
Exactly.
end up with +4/+4, but you have more minions the other way, so you get a bit more utility.
Well, exactly.
But it's a higher mana investment. It's pretty interesting no matter which way you slice
Well,
it.
this is now a strong turn coming from Mysterious because he can play. He can't quite play that, but he can play the Swash, Firefly, and Sound Chain Gang, and the Firefly and the Swash have their buff, so that's something.
Yeah, and going into Anduin in the next couple of turns, having these buffed up minions that are still below the threshold of 5 attack is very, very important. It's interesting that he's kind of piling up so heavily with them on this turn. I would expect to see the Chain Gang come down instead because he doesn't care about that card very much at all. It's very weak compared to all the other cards in his hand. So getting it out now to maybe be met with, I don't know, Kazakus Potion AoE or Dragonfire maybe, and then make sure you have your strongest minions going into their turn 8. I say strongest minions that have less than 5 attack.
Acolyte of Agony not going to be doing an awful lot in this matchup. It's not quite like Mysterious is against a mage that has a solved lethal, but the Acolyte can just swoop on
Oh,
in
yeah.
and remove from. That's something that happened in a game that we were casting recently.
I remember that. But now here for Mysterious, going into turn 8, this is kind of the worst a Bone Mare can possibly be because it's not only not getting any charge effect, in quotation marks, because all the minions are frozen, but it's making you so vulnerable to Anduin. And you are in a position where if Anduin comes down, you can still absolutely be looking to win the game.
Yeah, it's a tough turn because of that. So it's not one of those positions that we've been talking about a lot today where it's like, well, whatever, if they have Anduin, they win anyway. So I like this. Make a big Edwin. Pretty resistant board to Anduin regardless. Shadow of Death is the problem here.
Well, the fact you've already seen the Kazakus Potion as well, like, you can go quite wide on this board
Yeah.
and feel very comfortable. And the 8/8, if you're saying, okay, they're going to death it, but what are they going to do about the rest of my...
Well, yeah, exactly. It's like they can Death, but then they can't Dragonfire Potion.
Yeah.
They can Dragonfire Potion, but then the 8/8 survives. They can Anduin, but then everything else still survives. There's no real punish here from Toastmonster.
Yeah, that's right. It's a diverse board, which is what Rogue is very often so good at doing, because they don't just go super wide on the board with a bunch of very evenly statted stuff like Aggro Druid would do or Aggro Paladin might do. They can have these real power spikes in terms of their cards with when Bone Mare, Keleseth, or Edwin can afford them that.
I guess the only punish would be Soul Priest, Circle of Healing, Binding Heal.
Even then, that's not the worst because they're using Binding Heal to damage themselves as
Yeah.
opposed to heal themselves. So that's kind of a 10 damage swing in your favor, and all of a sudden, you just need to find Leroy because, make no mistake, Mysterious wants to find Leroy in this matchup 100%.
I'm looking at that Acolyte of Agony again. I'm thinking, oh, look, the Bone Mare buff, the big lifesteal, but it's just not relevant in this matchup
Yeah.
yet, anyway.
It,
It's a shame.
yeah, obviously the Anduin will kill any minion that's buffed because they all go up to the 5 attack threshold.
Yeah.
So you may as well go for the smallest minion because then just the least dies, basically, when it comes down.
So many
And it's also worth pointing out that there is actually no Anduin in Toastmonster's hand. We're talking as if it's there because that's what Mysterious kind of has to assume, but it isn't available.
Could be drawn, though, as it so often is in these situations. Just when you think you're down and out and you're struggling a little bit, he does just pop up, doesn't he?
Yeah. Can be found off the powered shield as well. So if he wanted to go with that line of play, 2 draws to go for it, I would expect instead to see something else. It's going to have to be a little bit more reactive as Dragonfire Potion is picked up. Mysterious has kind of played perfectly around that eventuality as well, actually.
Yeah, Mysterious, very calculated this game. And he's had the luxury of being able to do that. He's been able to play around the majority of Toastmonster's things without putting himself in a bad position. Psychic Scream is already gone.
Yeah.
Dan is smirking at me right now, and I'm not entirely sure why. I'm going to stop talking
I'm
right
just
there.
smiling at you, literally. I enjoy your voice.
Well,
Dan.
that's cute, Dan.
Is that all right?
That's fine.
Good. All right. You're pleasant to
I
watch.
don't trust it,
Okay.
but it's fine.
And so it's going to be 13, 14 lethal damage on board anyway. There's nothing that Toastmonster can do here. He's going to concede and throw it to 2 games apiece. And it's going to be a Raza Priest mirror to close things
Where's
out.
Lorinda when you need him? Eh?
Well,
he
did you
get the yes?
Did you catch the one earlier?
Yes.
You did catch the one
I
earlier.
was going absolutely bananas in the audience when actually going to hit me round the face.
Good point, Derek. Derek is the one we don't want to hang out with.
Yeah, mate. Oh, wait, you think...
You think Lorinda's the old man who'll give you a clip around the ear, won't he?
Yeah.
Grab you by the ear and oh, come here.
I don't know, man.
Don't know why he's a pirate now.
He's got a good swing on him.
You reckon?
Yeah.
I don't know how you know that. I don't also want to know. So, game 5, Mysterious versus Toastmonster. Winner goes on to face Big Ben.
And my goodness, has neither player hit anything. These are two absolutely dreadful hands to get things going. Northshire Cleric, obviously, I would say, I suppose, the best card out of all of these, just because it's basically not a card. It just cycles through to something else. And even then, you know, you're giving your opponent the ability to start drawing with Acolyte of Pain or something like that.
You do mean Novice Engineer. I just
What did I say?
Northshire Cleric. I just spent
really?
Just spent a good 10 seconds looking around both hands. Like, where's the North? Okay.
Ah, sorry. I do mean Novice Engineer. You're a very astute young man.
It's because we saw so much Northshire Cleric in the previous
We
one.
did see a lot of clerics.
We were just worried about it being on the board and people getting overdrawn, losing their Anduin. We don't want that to happen. And it won't happen to Mysterious because he is the first one to pick it up.
He might lose his Raza though.
Advantage Mysterious in the game of Hearthstone tennis.
I would agree.
Yeah?
Yeah. You're only caring about finding Shadow Reaper Anduin, Raza, and to an extent Kazakus, because it gets you closer to those cards. And obviously is a great piece to deliver lethal damage if you already have both of them.
Also, to an extent, Prophet Velen. People forget about that.
Yeah,
because
yeah,
it's
yeah.
not the card you want in the mulligan, but obviously it is important to draw that card at some point. You've just got a little bit more time for it. Not that much time after Anduin, though.
This surprises me.
Yeah, this surprises me
I
too.
think a conversation we had already is, do you save this for later? Because one of the ways you avoid losing is healing yourself back up.
I heard Lorinda very passionately saying that he thought that this was a bad move a lot of the time yesterday
Yeah.
in the mirror.
The thing is, you're hoping to push board damage with this line of play, which is something to consider in the mirror. Board control very, very rarely matters in the Raza Priest mirror, but you can maybe push a bit of damage if you get lucky. But the thing is, your opponent hasn't played anything for the first few turns at all outside of Mass Dispel, so the chances of them having some way to deal with this, I would say, is very high indeed. So I would have preferred holding it back there.
That being said, Toastmonster doesn't actually, or didn't use the Shadow Word Pain to deal with it. Mysterious does still have the initiative here. He's going to make these trades.
He's committing to his line of play of trying to get board control and push for some phase damage, but I think it's more valuable later on down the line.
But I guess the reasoning why it's valuable, right, is so you can heal yourself back up out of range of that the combo. But now, so often you see more than 28 damage available anyway.
That's true.
And you can just hit them for 30 anyway. So if Mysterious is feeling like that's a possibility, that it's not going to make too much of a difference later, instead he can be the one to batter his opponent down and force his opponent to play the Priest of the Feast and try and heal themselves back up.
I think that's a very valid point, but obviously, as you said, there are those games where they have way over lethal damage and there's nothing really you can do to prevent that. But there's quite a few games I find where they have around the 18 to 22 mark, something like that. Maybe they found Velen but not Mind Blast, things like that. And if you don't heal up to about 30, you will just die. So I think I still would say it's a little bit more valuable early on, but applying a little bit of pressure, or at the very least just denying Acolytes of Pain and Northshire Clerics, is maybe the most valuable thing that this Priest of the Feast will afford Mysterious.
Okay, I was wondering for a second there if that Shadow Word Pain was going to go into the Northshire Cleric. Because of the game we saw earlier, I guess Toastmonster has to just sit there and think, God, don't have Pyromancer Circle, don't have Pyromancer Circle.
Even then, okay. So
Yeah, okay. The hand's not that full.
he draws 3 extra cards, maybe he burns 1 or 2, whatever.
No, you're right, you're right.
Even in the last game, like, Ben got punished for his line of play, but it wasn't that awful. Like he only got overdrawn a couple of cards, and he just got unfortunate that it was Anduin. Obviously, you don't want to be overdrawing cards wherever possible, but in this particular instance, if Mysterious had to give his opponent 3 cards before he burnt any, I think Monster would be very happy.
I feel like there is some sort of programming that when a card is burnt, some sort of gasp of air has to leave your body. It either has to be a very, like, like you're scared, or just like a sigh. Ooh, like when you watch Fire. Yeah. Mate, it's like
I'm in your mind.
Don't go in there. Don't.
All right.
Are you out?
I'm done. But yeah, for Mysterious, just denying draw from his opponent, a perfectly good use of silence. And this is kind of the thing that goes back to you saying very often they will just be able to deliver well over 30 points of damage. In the course of the game, you do just lose a lot of the valuable cards that afford you the ability to do that. Circle of Healing will very often be used for draw, either to draw yourself or overdraw your opponent in this matchup. And silence has its utility as well. So the ability to get 32, 36 damage in this mirror kind of fairly often quickly falls by the wayside.
Okay, there is King 4 in this deck. Not the ideal time to play it though, is it?
Yeah, it's a little bit weird because you're not obviously playing the 5-mana potion at the same time. Even if you could, you've already got a fairly full hand. So 1-mana potion was something to consider. But even though he's got a very full hand, I would still absolutely expect him to pick draw cards there because he just needs to find more cards. He hasn't found Velen and he hasn't found Raza, and he needs to get those as quick as he can because he obviously has no idea how awful his opponent's hand is.
So 17 cards available for Toastmonster, 18 for Mysterious. So fairly even at the moment in who's drawn what. No one really been able to cycle ahead. Loot Hoarder is a very scary card as well that's in Toastmonster's hand because sometimes you put it on the board, of course you can be punished by a Potion of Madness. Yep. So a lot of the times you don't put it down until you can find some way to kill it off.
Absolutely right. It's often the card that comes down either just when there's nothing else on board on turn 2, or when you play a Spirit Lash or Pyro at the same time.
It's actually just a good way of illustrating why Potion of Madness is one of the better cards in this matchup. There's Loot Hoarder, there's Northshire Cleric, there's Acolyte of Pain.
Yeah.
That card can do some serious work.
It really can. It very often just ends up being a bit cute. But yeah, it's got real game to be able to pull it in your favor, which is why Toastmonster is only playing the 1 minion here.
Yeah.
Even if there's Potion of Madness, it has to be Spirit Lash or Shadow Word Pain or whatever other nonsense in order to actually make it work in Mysterious's favor.
And look at that. Mysteria is just going to slam down Shadow Reaper Anduin. Not really even taking time to think. Just, yep, it's turn 8, it's available. I'm going to start pinging down my opponent. Yes, it sucks that Raza hasn't been drawn yet, but still getting in these bits of chip damage now, that's going to be very helpful.
Well, double benefit of the fact that Mysterious, well, there's nothing big he wants to kill with the Anduin, and he can also just start getting some value with the hero power, even if it's only once or twice per turn. It can have a little bit of game.
Shadow Vision's one of the better cards he can get from Curious Glimmerroot. Gives him a second copy of any spell in his deck.
Yeah, I kind of disagree. Now, given that there's only Power Word Shield that actually draws a card left in his deck, that's not really all too much he wants to hit, I would say.
Okay.
I mean, obviously, if he had the full combo, you could go for something like Holy Smite to just push himself over to the absolute 100% lethal limits.
That's true. I mean, an extra Holy Smite, if you've got Radiant Elemental in the hand, is never a bad thing later on.
Yeah.
That really can push the damage.
That's what I mean. But in terms of draw, which is the only thing that Toastmonster cares about in this instance, Power Word Shield is the only card he cares about, and he got it. But interesting that he's, worth pointing out, he's playing Doomsayer.
I was just going to say, that's not normal in Razaka's Priest at the moment.
It's very much fallen out of favor, I would say, as has Greater Healing Potion, both very unfashionable cards, I would say. Even Lyra to an extent, although that's less so. That's still very often being played in certain decks.
Yeah, well, it's now Lyra or Auctioneer, and sometimes both. But the thing is, Binding Heal is so much better than Greater Healing Potion with those cards as a combo piece. It's just worth running it instead of Greater Healing Potion.
I feel like a lot of players in this tournament have tried to find cards to counter aggro in the best way as possible. I think they've all had the same read that there are going to be these aggressive decks being brought. They were all sat in the same room. They all saw people succeeding with aggro Druid, and they were like, oh god, how do we deal with this? And Doomsayer, if you get on 2, it can do really well against aggro.
It can indeed. Do you like the inclusion of Doomsayer here in this lineup? Why do you think it started falling out of favor, Dan?
So one thing Doomsayer does do in any Highlander deck ever is it makes that Revival Kazakus potion a little bit awkward. Priests do have Revival mechanics. They've got the Revival cards they can get from Lyra as well, the Spellstone, etc. That's one reason, probably not the most major reason. I think a better reason is just that there are loads of board players in this deck. There's the Spirit Lashes to heal and clear the board and all of these other bits and pieces. The Doomsayer just doesn't often find a spot, and Toastmonster clearly has teched this deck to beat aggro.
Yes, I would most certainly agree. Both of these players have to an extent with Mysterious, putting in the Golakka Crawlers, and Toastmonster with the Doomsayers. Golakka Crawlers, I believe, as well in his deck, but maybe the Doomsayer takes that spot for the anti-aggro choice.
He's probably cut the card, which name I never remember. 4 mana, silence everything. What's that card
Mass
called?
Dispel?
Mass Dispel. I always blank on that one.
Oh, you always think of that spell.
Yeah.
Got you. Not this spell.
I'm not. No.
You weren't laughing, so I thought I'd explain it to
All
you.
right, thanks. So Kazaka's being picked up is big for Toastmonster here as well. Allows him just to get something on the board. It fills the mana well, and he finds the first piece of the puzzle as well, with Raza finally being played. Both players have drawn through more than half of their deck now, so we should start to see these key cards popping up.
Like Prophet Velen.
Yeah, it's getting to the breaking point for both of these players. You know, both of these players have cool tricks they can do. Given the fact that Mysterious shows no sign of having Raza available yet, Toastmonster could potentially try and shuffle back a couple of the same card into his opponent's deck with Psychic Scream. Maybe if his opponent plays Radiant Elemental or something like that over the next turn or two, he could start shuffling back. It's unlikely to happen, but it's worth considering.
We've seen it happen. With like loot hoarders and things, it's happened
Oh,
before,
yes.
hasn't it? And it's hilarious when it does happen, but also painful.
Well, that's a nice way of playing the board. Shadow of Pain and Shadow of Death working in unison together, or is Mysterious going to hold on to Pain?
He's just wondering if it's even worth it, because again, you don't care about board control very much at all here. The Death basically just coming down to clear out room in his hand. But the thing is, even though you're not going to overdraw, you still just want to get rid of cards in your hand, because you've got Lyra, you've got Acolyte, and you don't really have any other use for Shadow Word Pain anyway, and the 2 damage to face is very unlikely to stick as Toastmonster finds the all-important Shadow Reaper afterwards.
But something we haven't really noted on too much is Mysterious does have that extra 12 armor as well. We were talking earlier about the healing back up with the Priest of the Feast,
Very
but he's
good point.
managed to put himself at a decent life total. Yes, okay, Toastmonster has drawn his combo first. He only has 11 cards left, I believe. Mysterious still has 12 in his deck. So there is still the chance that Mysterious could find that Raza.
Yeah, but at the same time, Toastmonster, yes, there's a lot of health for Mysterious, but it's not that much health. It's only 39 at the moment, and looking at what Toastmonster does have, he's got Radiant, which he can play with Velen when he picks it up. He's got Potion of Madness that he may be able to play in a fire, will be 0 mana, deal 4 damage. Like, he's got means of dealing a lot more than the regular 28 damage combo when he picks up Smite and Mind Blast and Velen. But I did just list a bunch of cards that Toastmonster does first have to pick up, so Mysterious is in a very strong position right now.
Yeah, Mysterious, though, might be inclined here to put Acolyte down, put Pyromancer, start looking for more. And then Toastmonster could, if he wanted to, Psychic Scream back those cards into Mysterious's deck and say, well, those are more cards that you could be drawing.
The dream for Toastmonster, obviously, is that he can then draw his own Galactic Crawler plus his own Acolyte or something, scream them both back, and then Mysterious's Raza won't be active when it's drawn.
Yeah.
That's absolute best case scenario.
Mysterious just does not know how to play out this turn. He wasn't sure if he should go for Lyra
It's too late
or
for
Wild
that.
Pyromancer, but he's just going Ping, Lyra Ping. I do not like this line of play. I do not like it.
I think this is
Samaya.
a panic play, especially now with the coin as well. This is, you're running out of
There's
time
no
very
time
quickly.
for this.
Wow. Okay. So I think the play that he was looking at was maybe to go off with Lyra while there's an empty board. And all of a sudden, you actually may need to demand a fair amount of answers from your opponent just to clear this off the board, and thus you can buy yourself a little extra time. But this just feels like the worst of both lines of play, because he could have gone with Acolyte and Wild Pyromancer, as you said, to draw a whole bunch of cards. Or he could have drawn a whole bunch of cards with Lyra. Instead, he went for a couple of fairly unimpactful pings.
And there's that Psychic Scream we were talking about, just to make the deck a little bit more heavy. Instead of 11 cards, I think that puts Mysterious up to 14 now. And it's going to make it increasingly difficult to find that last piece of the puzzle.
So now for Mysterious, does he need to start looking at some of the slightly weirder lines of play, like just sticking Prophet Velen on the board? Can he just go Velen, Mind Blast, Holy Smite, or is that truly ludicrous?
He's not seen Shadow Word Death yet. And that's an issue.
He'd be pushing 14 damage, which brings his opponent down to 15. I just don't think you're ever really going to be finding yourself creeping over the finish line in that instance.
He wouldn't have the mana to play Velen and Mind Blast and Ping.
Oh, we could, Holy Smite, which would do...
Oh,
14.
sorry, right. So he's not actually playing a 0 power at all, okay.
No, yeah, I mean, I'm not... Yeah. It's probably not the line of play that he should be looking at all too closely.
I'm really surprised that Mysterious is playing this Acolyte now. Why didn't you play it the turn before when you had the Pyromancer, you had more chance of drawing, what, potentially 3 cards?
I would agree. He could have drawn Raza on that turn, for goodness sake, and then he could have really started to pump up his draws.
Of course, the hilarious thing is, if he draws Raza, that's lethal in 2 turns he's got set up. He just does need to draw that Raza first, so that's why he's going all in on these pings, on the Acolyte this turn. Glimmerroot might be Raza.
Yeah.
Yep, it might be, but it probably won't be, as the Prophet Velen is picked up for Toastmonster. Looking at all these pink and purpley cards, he does not have Mind Blast available to him at the moment, and 36 damage is an awfully tall order. But he can just start pushing that damage, drawing those cards with the Kazakus Potion, question mark, not exactly sure what the effect on that is.
It's all right, I'm going to draw a card instead.
Yeah.
Yeah, taking a draw away from your opponent, really important there.
Because he can maybe expect to start to see a Raza coming down from Mysterious, because he did draw a lot of cards. But if he can just deny 1 draw from his opponent, that could be all the difference.
There you go, the Kazakus Potion is actually
Wow.
Summon a Demon, create a nice big board.
It's a pretty weak potion.
It is, but in this situation, it's not weak at all.
5 damage would be nice as well, though.
5 damage
We're
would.
just drawing more cards, like whatever. You just need to get yourself closer to that. You need to get yourself to that Mind Blast as quick as possible.
Well, Psychic Scream is going to have to happen to get rid of these, which is a shame. Maybe Mysterious can draw Raza next turn, otherwise I guess it's back to the Glimmerroot plan.
And this is still a... You know, this is kind of scary for Toastmonster, because as we can see, Mysterious does just have lethal in 2 turns if he picks up the Raza right now. And Toastmonster did not push all that much damage with his previous line of plays. Just summoning a big board was weak to Psychic Scream, and we saw that exact play come down.
Toastmonster can't be far off though. I'm counting 28 damage, I think, or 26 damage, or something around there from Toastmonster.
6, 10, 14, 18. I'm counting 18 damage.
Plus the damage on board.
Oh, with the damage on board, then that would be 23.
No, I wasn't even counting the damage on board.
Because you get 6 from Velen.
10 from Radiant, 14 from Inner Fire, 18 from Silence. Where did I get the other from?
No idea, mate.
I think I was seeing a Holy Smite that wasn't there or something.
Yeah. But with the Mind Control, that is obviously lethal, taken away once again. But the pickup of Mind Blast would have afforded it once again to Toastmonster, but he's just not quite there. But Mysterious still unable to find the Raza.
Toastmonster's not there this turn, but he's getting pretty freaking close. It's going to be next turn. Unless Mysterious heals up. And Velen plus Spirit Lash doesn't feel like it's winning Mysterious the game anytime soon.
I mean, it's situations like this where you have to go for the weird plays. That's where I was bringing up the possibility of Prophet Velen maybe being right on a clear board just to pray that it sticks, even though obviously I would not have made that line of play because you don't know how deep Raza is into your deck.
Hey, remember that Priest of the Feast that Mysterious had earlier on turn 4?
Yeah, that would have been pretty nice here.
And this is something that we do have to consider when we're thinking about the play. It was on my mind. I didn't really want to bring it up because I don't want to say that it hasn't lost Mysterious the game. The fact that Mysterious hasn't drawn Raza has lost it the game. I think he's down to, like, what, maybe 7, maybe 8 cards at this point.
I think very possibly less.
I mean, realistically, even if he were to play Priest of the Feast this turn, he'd have to play some spells. These are spells which he is not then winning the game with after he's drawn Raza, so that's still an issue.
I have been physically counting, so I didn't...
Well done, mate.
Well, I kind of had to.
Wait, what have you been counting?
The cards.
Okay.
Get thrown out for that.
Don't tell management.
So here makes the correct pick, Greater Healing Potion. Obviously, it's not revealed deck lists, but even though Greater Healing Potion is not the most run card, it's still something that's worth considering. And he could actually play it right now.
He's going to Spirit Lash, though.
A bunch of health. We're going for Spirit Lash instead. Gains him a similar amount of health. Also draws a card. So yeah, this is definitely the better play to go.
And that's going to be lethal.
Yep.
There's the Holy Smite that I was seeing before.
Very nicely done by Toastmonster, putting himself through to the winner's bracket final. We've seen pretty strong play from him throughout so far today. I would say definitely a couple of blips in this last game. Playing out his Kazakus Potion, or even picking that Kazakus Potion, it's not a particularly strong one to go for, but in the end, it does work out for him.
Quite rightly, an exhale of breath with Toastmonster as well. He knows how important this is to get to the winner's bracket final, which guarantees him top 3 By the way, getting into the winners bracket final. If you had told him at the start of the season he was going to be finishing top 3, I don't think he would have believed you. Mysterious falls to the lower bracket, however, and that means he will join the likes of Ball Control.